Today's lesson will come from Chapter 8. We're going to work on a sales budget, a production budget, and if time permits, we're going to do a direct materials purchases budget. All right, you should be able to see the information for the sales budget. In this chapter, we're going to be working with budgets for manufacturing business, and some of this will be a review from ACC 121. And then, of course, we're going to add a little bit more to it in cost accounting. But you always prepare your budgets in an order, and we always start with the sales budget. Sales budget is rather simple to complete. What you need to do is gather information about how many units you want to sell and what the selling price of those units will be. So in this particular budget, we're going to be the Flash Kick company, and we're going to manufacture and sell soccer balls for teams of children in elementary and high school. Flash Kick's best-selling lines are the practice ball line. Durable soccer balls for training and practice. They're going to match the ball line high-performance soccer balls used in games in the first 4 months of the next year. Flash Kick specs the following. So they've given you practice balls that they're going to be selling, as well as match balls that they're going to be selling. And they want you to construct a sales budget for Flash Kick for the first 3 months of the coming year. So we're just going to do it for January, February, and March, which is the first quarter of the year. They want you to show total sales for each product line by month and in total for the first quarter. If required, round your answers to the nearest cent. All right, so in this problem, we're going to start with our practice balls and our sales budget. For January, the amount of the practice balls are just listed for the months January, February, March, straight down the page. We're just doing the first 3 months there. So all you got to do is write in the amount of the practice balls for each month. And then what you would do is total up for the first 3 months, which is the first quarter of the year, the amount of units that you're expecting to sell. So 50 and 58,000 is 108,000 plus 80,000 is 188,000. Then we're going to write in the unit price. The unit price for the practice balls is $8.75 for each of the first 3 months. And so for the quarter, it would still be $8.75 because none of the sales per unit is going to change from that 3-month period. And then we simply multiply the number of units times the unit price. So starting with January, there were 50,000 units that we were going to sell times $8.75. For the month of February, you do the same thing. 58,000 times $8.75. And for the month of March, it's 80,000 times $8.75. And then finally, you can add these three together. You can just multiply the number of units for the quarter was 188,000 times $8.75. And then you can just check your work, make sure your math is right. And then we can move on to the match balls. And for the match balls, these are the units, and this is the selling price. So you're just plugging in the information here that's given basically, and then multiplying. And then we're going to take the price, which was $16, and enter it in. So since it's $16 for each of the 3 months, then for the quarter, it's $16. And then we're going to simply multiply to find the total amount of the sales. And then I would check my work again just to make sure your math is correct. And then for the very last thing, what we're going to do is we're going to combine the total sales dollar amount for the practice balls and the match balls, the total sales dollars together. And we'll pick up the practice ball sales for the month of February. And we'll add to it the match ball sales for the month of February. You're going to do the same thing for March. You're going to add the two of these together, and then we're going to add these together. And then you'll check your work. And evidently I didn't add something right here. So let's go over here. 507,500 plus 120,000 equals 627,500. And that's it for the sales budget. It's pretty simple. You just multiply the number of units that you're expecting to sell for each of the months times the unit price. And this is a sales budget. This is a projection of the amount of sales that we're expecting for the first quarter in the year. And you would get this information probably from your sales department. So you go and ask them for information and then put together a budget like that for the sales budget. In this problem, they also have a what if analysis down here. So let's look and see what happened with that. It says, what if Flash Kick added a third line, tournament quality soccer balls that were expected to take 40% of the units sold of the match balls and would have a selling price of $45 each in January and February, and then $48 in March. Prepare the sales budget for Flash Kick for the first 3 months. All right, basically it's the same thing. You're starting out with the practice balls. So it's the very same thing that you have up here. So forgive me, I'm gonna be flipping back and forth a lot on this one, but I'm just bringing down, copying the information from above. So it starts out basically the same. And then you're gonna copy the information in for the match ball, starting with 7,000 units. So again, you're just copying in the information from the previous budget for the first two items. I'm going to check my work just to make sure. I didn't copy everything right. All right, for the match ball, 7,000 units. Oh, I know what I did wrong. All right, I got to read my directions. So I'm always cautioning you about reading your directions. So the teacher goofed here. So bear with me as we go back and we fix this. Let's read the directions. It says Flash Kick added a third line to the tournament qualities, a third line for tournament quality soccer balls that were expected to take 40% of the units sold of the match balls. So since that took 40% of that, that's not going to be 7,000 units. So probably an easy way to look at this is that the remaining 60% is the number of units that would be left of the match balls. So yes, they started with 7,000, but they took 40% of them to make those other tournament soccer balls. So we're going to multiply this by 60%, and that will give you 4,200. And you got to fix each one of these by multiplying each one by 60%, what was left. Or you could have multiplied it by 40% and then subtracted it back, but to eliminate one of those steps, I'm just taking each one of these that I had wrong and multiplying it by 60%. So 13,000 times 60% is 7,800. And then we would add across 4,200 units plus 4,500 plus 7,800 is 16,500. The unit price stayed the same, and then we need to remultiply to get these to the correct amounts. So 4,200 times $16 is 67,200. And then I'm going to take 4,500 and multiply it by 16. get it in the right place here. And then 7,800 times 16. 124,800. And then 16,500 times 16. Okay, now we got it straight. So again, read your instructions because it tells you information that you need, obviously. 40%, we're going to go toward the new soccer balls, which are going to be called tournament balls, 40% of the match balls. So that's why I had to multiply it by the complement of 60% to get what the match balls had remaining. So for your tournament balls, then we're basically going to take what we had for the match balls and we're going to multiply it by 40% because we're giving them 40%. Or you could have also subtracted your match balls from your original match ball and it would give you the same thing. But 7,000 times 40%. It's 2,800 units. And then we're going to take 7,500 units times 40% equals 3,000. And then we had 13,000 in the last month times 40%. And then I'm going to go ahead and just check my work because this is some of these. So that has to be what we're doing here. Now the unit price for the tournament balls was given to you. You have to look in your instructions to find it. They would have a selling price of $45 each in January and February. So the first 2 months, the selling price was $45. Then it goes up to $48 in the month of March. And so I'm going to skip over this part right here because we have to find an average of it. And it most likely is going to be beneficial if you know what your total sales are going to be and work backwards at finding it. So if you'll just bear with me for just a second. But this part right here was given, so you can just put that in. Then you multiply just like we were doing before to find the total sales in units. So 2,800 times 45. equals 126,000. And I'm going to go ahead and check my work as I go so we can make sure that we've got the right math in there. And so it's 3,000 for February times 45. And then 5,200 times 48 was 249. 249,600. Okay, and once I know what my total sales are for each of the months, add them together to find the total sales for the quarter. So I'm just going to leave that in the calculator and I'm going to add 135,000 to it. And then I'm going to add 126,000 to that. $510,600. Okay, so I simply added these three together to get my total sales for the quarter for the tournament balls. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this total sales in dollars and I'm going to divide it by the total sales in units, and that will give me an average of the unit price or the selling price there. So I'm going to leave this in the calculator and I'm just going to simply divide it by 11,000. And that will give me an average of $46. And I'm going to go ahead and round that up and see if it'll take it. $46.42. Because it says to round to the nearest cent. And it like that. So the last thing that you need to do then is you need to combine the dollar amount of sales for each one of these different types of balls that you're selling. So we're going to start in January. The practice balls, the total sales was 437,500. We're going to add to that the 67,200. And we're going to add to that 126,000. And that will give you 630,700. And then we're going to add up the total sales for February, starting with the practice balls, 507,500. And then we'll add to that 72,000 for the match balls. And then we're going to add to that 135,000. And that's going to give us a total of 714,500. And then we're going to do the same thing for March. We're going to take the 700,000 and add 124,800 to that. So that would give you 824,800 plus the 249,600. $1,074,400. And then you're going to combine all three of these together, or you can do these right here. It should all add up to be the same. So I'm going to start with this 1,645,000. I'm going to add 264,000 to that. And then I'm going to add 510,600. All right, and so that's your sales budget. If you would add a extra ball to the sales budget, it's basically the same. You're taking the number of units that you're expecting to sell and multiplying it by the selling price. The sales budget is your first budget that you prepare, and you'll use these figures to help you to prepare the next budget. The next budget that I want to look at is the production budget, which is coming from exercise 2. So I'm going to move on to exercise 2. Move that out of the way so you can see this for just a minute. And then we're moving on to exercise 2. And so you should see the information again from the production budget is for Flash Kick. And it's basically the same thing that we were doing before. They gave us the selling price and all of that. But now we're going to construct a production budget from this information. All right, so it says Flash Kick Company manufactures and sells soccer balls for teams of children in elementary and high school. Flash Kick's best-selling lines are the practice ball, which is a durable soccer ball for training and practice, and the match ball, which is high-performance soccer balls used in the game. In the first 4 months of the next year, they expected to sell this. Flash Kick requires that, now they've given you this additional information here. Flash Kick requires ending inventory of the product to equal 20% of the next month's unit sales. Beginning inventory in January was 3,100 practice balls for soccer and 400 match soccer balls. All right, so first of all, we want to put in our unit sales that would come from the sales budget. So, and this production budget that we're doing is for practice balls to start with. Then we're going to do it for the match balls. And that's the only two that they're considering in this particular problem. So what I need to go back to is I'm going to go back to exercise 8.1 for just a minute. Let me see if it's still in Cengage for me. And I'm going to write down the number of sales for January, February, and March for the practice balls. So if you give me just a second, I'm going to write this down by hand so I don't forget them. And then I'm going to also look at, while I'm over there, the production budget for the match balls for January, February, and March. So hang on just a second. I'm going to flip back to 801. All right. And so I want to make sure that I'm looking at the very first budget that we completed. And for the practice balls for the month of January, we were going to produce 50,000 of those in January. And in February, it's 58,000. And in March, it's 80,000. And for the match balls, it was 7,000. And 7,500. And 13,000. And all that was given, and it might have been given here too. May have jumped the gun a little bit. Yeah, there's 7,000 for the match balls. Yeah, it's all given here, so you don't have to flip back and forth on this particular one. You just write down what they've given you. But what I do want you to realize is that the sales budget is connected to this production budget. So I don't think it was a bad thing that we look back at the first budget. So we're going to put in the amount of the sales for the practice balls for January, which is 50,000. And for February, it was 58,000. And then for March, it was 80,000. And all that's given information. And to the unit sales, we're going to need to add our ending amount of inventory that we're requiring. And it says Flashback requires ending inventory of products to equal 20% of the next month's sales units. So we're going to add back in the desired ending inventory on the production budget. And then I'm going to look at February sales. That's next month's sales. It's going to be equal to 20% of that. So they kind of threw that little thing in there for you. And so a lot of times they'll give it to you, and this time we didn't. You got to figure it. So 20% of 58,000 is 11,600 would be your ending inventory units. And then for February, next month's sales would have been 80,000. And we'd have to multiply that by 20%. And then for March, we'd have to go back up here and look at April's sales for practice balls were 100,000. If you multiplied 100,000 times 20%, it'll give you 20,000 here. And then we're going to add the two of these together to get the total needed. And I just want to check my math here so far. And we're going to add these two together, and that looks like it's 61,600. And then we add these two together for March. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to back out our beginning inventory. So this seems a little strange, I know, because normally we deduct ending inventory and we add beginning inventory and that kind of thing. But if you think about it, it makes sense, because what you're doing is you're estimating what your production is going to be. And so you want to have some leftover inventory just in case you sell more practice balls than you thought you were going to. So that's why we add ending inventory here. Then you're going to deduct out your beginning inventory because you don't want to have too much left over on hand. And they're estimating how much their beginning inventory is going to be. And beginning inventory in January was 3,100 soccer balls. And so we put 3,100 here. And then we'll determine the units that we have produced by subtracting that beginning inventory from the total needed. So 61,600 minus 3,100 units equals 58,500 that you should be producing during this first month of January. And again, I'm going to check my work because your math's got to be right to be able to go forward. Now, in your instructions, the ending inventory for the month of January would become the beginning inventory for the month of February. So that's the trick to this one. We had calculated the desired ending inventory to be this in January. That will become the beginning inventory for February. Does that make sense to you? I know you're not here listening to me, but I have such a habit of saying that in class. What a strange year it's been. We're going to subtract out the 74,000 units minus the beginning inventory units of 11,600. And that will give you 62,400. And then February's ending inventory of 16,000 will become the beginning inventory for March. Then you're going to subtract out 16,000 from that, and that'll leave you with 84,000. And so that's how you prepare a production budget for the practice balls. And you're going to do basically the same thing for the match balls. So the match balls, the number of units that you sold was given to you, 7,000 for the month of January. For February, it was 7,500. And for March, it was 13,000. And then, like we did before, we're going to add back in our desired ending inventory. And let me go back to the instructions again to see if anything's changed. Flash Kick requires ending inventory product to equal 20% of next month's unit sales. But we're working on ending inventory. So Flash Kick requires ending inventory be 20% of the next month's unit sales. So here we go. 7,500 times 20%. And then 13,000 times 20%. Next month's sales were 13,000 times 20% gives you 2,600 units. And then for March, next month's sales were 18,000. I'm sorry. Remember, we're on match balls. So it's 18,000 times 20%, which is 3,600. Then I'm going to check just to make sure my math is right. And then you're going to add the two of these together. Okay, that's 8,500 there. Don't really need my calculator for that. And this would be and we'll check my math. And then we're going to add in we're going to less out the beginning inventory. And you have to go to your additional information to find what your beginning inventory was for the match balls. And it was 400. And then the ending inventory for January will become the beginning inventory for February. You see how we're copying that in there. And then we're going to take our ending inventory for February, and it's going to become our beginning inventory for March. And then you're going to add your total plus the beginning inventory, or excuse me, less the beginning inventory. And then we'll have 10,100 minus 1,500 units. And that equals 8,600. And then 16,600 minus 2,600. And that equals 14,000. All right, and so that's the production budget for the match balls. So start with your sales budget. You need your sales information to start you out in the production budget. And then you're going to need your production budget to help you with the next budget, which is the direct materials purchases budget. So I'm going to move to the next one. And then this is the direct materials purchases budgets. And so they have a partial one set up for you, just like they did on the others. And this is the same information that we've been given before. This is additional information that you need in a direct materials purchases budget. Obviously, you're going to need to know how many materials that you're going to need to buy. And so this additional information helps us when we're getting ready to fill this in. So you notice here that they've started with the units produced. And this is the direct materials purchases budget for polyvinyl chloride panels. So they didn't continue on with the previous, well, I guess they did. They continued on with that. So that must be some kind of vinyl for the balls that they're using as the materials. So every practice ball requires 70 parts of a square yard of polyvinyl chloride panels. 1 bladder with a valve to fill with air, and 3 ounces of glue. Flash Kick's policy is that 20% of the following month's production needs for raw materials will be in ending inventory. Beginning inventory in January for all raw materials met this requirement. So first of all, we're going to start with the units that we are producing for January and February. And let's see if they gave it to us here. They don't, because this is your selling budget here. So I'm going to go back to the previous one to see if we can figure out just exactly how many balls that we need to produce for January. And these are practice balls here for January. The total was, I'm going to write this down. For January, the total practice balls that we produced was 58,500. And then for February, the number that we produced is 62,400. And for March, it was 84,000. That's your practice balls. Now, if we look at the match balls, the total number of units that we produced were 8,100 units for January. And then 8,600 for February. And then March was 14,000. All right, so for January, then our practice balls would have been 58,500. So I'm going to put that in my calculator. And then we're going to add to that 8,100 balls. That were our match balls for January. And that's not what they wanted there. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause here for just a minute till I can get myself together here. They got to tell you somewhere how much those units produced are. Okay, so hang on just a second. I'm going to stop sharing this for just a moment. And I'm going to pause the recording for just a second. Okay, I'm ready to share my screen with you again. And you should be able to see the screen now. And what I did wrong is I didn't read my directions properly. Right here, it's direct materials purchases budget for the chloride panels. That's what it tells you. And we're going to construct a direct materials purchases budget for each type of raw material for the practice ball line. So what I did is I picked up both lines here, and that's not what should go there. I did both products, in other words. All we need is for the practice balls. So if you were to go back to exercise 8.2, and if you just looked at your units produced for the practice balls only, you can see that they were 58,500 for the month of January, and they were 62,400 for the month of February. So I'm going back to problem 8.3, and I'm going to put in the units produced were 58,500 for January, and then for February it would have been 62,400. Both of these were calculated for just the practice balls in the production budget from the previous exercise. So that's what we did earlier. And to this, we're going to need to add our desired ending inventory, just like we did with the direct materials purchases budget. We want to make sure that we have, we want to make sure that we have enough left over in ending inventory, but that's not going to go there. Hang on just a second. What we need to do here is we need to figure out how much the direct materials are going to be for production. So we've got to multiply this 58,500 by the number of yards it takes to produce one unit. So this right here should not be ending inventory, but it should be the direct materials per unit would probably be the best thing to put there. And I will check my work, see if that's exactly what they wanted there. And it was. So the direct materials per unit was the best answer to record there. And the information tells you that it takes 0.7 square yards to produce one bladder. And this is one of those panels that we're going to pick up here. So the direct materials per unit is 0.70. So I'm going to put that there and see if that's what they wanted there. And it is. And it's going to be the same for February. So 0.7 is going to go here. When we multiply the amount of materials we need per unit times the number of units that we're going to produce, it's going to give you the direct materials for production. So we're going to multiply the two of these together. And that will give you 40,950. And then we're going to take for February the number of units produced, which is 62,400. And we're going to multiply that by 70 parts of a yard. So we're going to need 43,680 for the month of February. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add back in some ending inventory because we do need some materials left over in case we make mistakes or our employees make mistakes when they're in the production process. So the desired ending inventory is going to go next. And the desired ending inventory, they tried to make it a little bit complicated for you. You're going to have to read carefully here. It says Flash Kick's policy is that 20% of the following month's production needs for raw materials is to be in ending inventory. So next month's production needs is 43,680. We would multiply 43,680 times 20% to get our ending inventory. Our desired ending inventory is 8736 for the month of January. Again, they told us that we had to go to the following month's production needs, which is February's production needs, and we're going to multiply that by 20% to get this ending inventory amount. So for the month February, we would need to know what the production needs are for March. So I'm going to go back for just a minute and I'm going to look at what we needed to produce for March from the 8-2 exercise. What we've got for March is that we needed to produce 84,000 units. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my calculator, 84,000 units that we needed to produce in March. Then in 803, I'm going back to it. I'm going to multiply that by 7 parts of a yard to get my direct materials needed for production for the month of March. So I'm going to multiply this amount by 70 parts of a yard, which will give you 58,800 as the direct materials needed for production. Then you have to multiply this direct materials needed for production by 20% to get February's ending inventory. And then we're going to combine the two of these together to get the total needed. And we're going to combine the direct materials needed for production for February plus the ending inventory and that'll give you 55,440. And then we're going to have to deduct back out our beginning inventory. And let's see what it says about beginning inventory. And it says beginning inventory for January for all raw materials met this requirement. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure out what the ending inventory was for December, and that will become the beginning inventory for January. So the direct materials that we needed for production was 40,950. 40, let me put that in right. The direct materials needed for production in January was 40,950. and we would multiply that by 20% to get the ending inventory for December. And the December's ending inventory will become January's beginning inventory. So 8190 is the ending or the beginning inventory for January that comes from the ending inventory of December. And it's all based on, you just have to read carefully, that is 20%, the ending inventory is 20% of the following month's production needs. So the following month's production needs for January is 40,950. So to get the ending inventory for December, we would multiply this by 20%. That ending inventory for December will become the beginning inventory for January. And then your ending inventory for January becomes the beginning inventory for February. So this 8736 is coming from right there. And I'm going to check my work, and then we will finish this direct materials purchases budget. So the amount of direct materials purchases that we need for February is going to be the total needed plus the beginning inventory. You subtract it. I think I added it. I did. I'm sorry, class. 49,686 minus 8190 equals 41,496. And then for February, it's 55,440 less 8736. And that's how you do the direct materials purchases budget. So it had gotten a little bit complicated because they had all this stuff in here about the ending inventory and the production needs. So just be careful with it. The next one is the purchases budget for the bladder and the valve. And so if you read your problem, there is one bladder and one valve to fill air. So the units produced for January would be 58,500, same as what we used before. And for February, it's 62,400. I got to write the right thing down. So 62,400. That's what you started with. And then you're going to do basically the same thing. You got to multiply it by the direct materials that you need per unit. And the direct materials that we need per unit, since there was just one bladder and one valve, you would just multiply it by 1. And so the direct materials needed for production is 58,500 and 62,400. Remember, you're multiplying these two. And then you're going to add back your desired ending inventory. And let's see what it's got to say about this. It's the same thing as we did before. It's 20% of the following month's production needs. So 62,400 is the production needs for February. Times 20% equals 12,480. And then we don't have marches out here, but if you go back to problem 8.2, you can see that the production budget for March is 84,000. So 84,000 would be multiplied by 1, which is 84,000. And then you would multiply that by 20%. So 80,000 times 20% is 16,000. Oh, and it didn't like that. Let's see. So we picked up, it's 84,000. I multiplied wrong. I'm sorry. The units produced for March was 84,000, and that comes from class exercise 8.2. So go back and look at exercise 8.2, and this 84,000 comes into play here. We're going to multiply that by 20%, which is 16,800. And then you're going to add the two of these together. Gives you 70,980. And we're going to combine the two of these together. And then we're going to subtract out our beginning inventory. And our beginning inventory was based on last month's ending inventory, But to find it for January, what you're going to need to know is how much direct materials that you produced in January, which was 58,500. And I'm going to put in my calculator 58,500. I'm going to multiply this by 20% because what I have to find is the ending inventory for December. The ending inventory for December becomes the beginning inventory for January. So 27,540 goes here. This is the ending inventory calculation, which is based on next month's production, which would be January. So the ending inventory for December is based on 58,500 times 20%. The ending inventory for December becomes the beginning inventory for January. So let me try this again. 58,500 is what I should have picked up here. 8,500 times 20% is 11,700. Helps if you multiply right. And the ending inventory for December becomes the beginning inventory for January. The ending inventory for January becomes the beginning inventory for February. So 12,480 goes here. And then we're going to take 70,980 and we're going to subtract from that 11,700. Of course, it doesn't equal that. 70,980 minus 11,700 equals 59,280. And then 79,200 less 12,480 equals 66,720. And then there are going to be 3 ounces of glue for the next budget. And we started out the same way. We do basically the same thing. The direct materials per unit is 3 ounces. So we're going to multiply 58,500 times 3 ounces. That gives you 175,500. And I'm going to check my work just for my math. That's 62,400 times 3. 187,200. And then we're going to add in our ending inventory. Our desired ending inventory is going to be calculated the same way we did above. We take the direct materials for production for the following month, which would be February. We're going to multiply that by 20%. And then for the month of March, our units produced was 84,000. And again, that came from 8-2 exercise. We're going to multiply that by the number of ounces of glue that we need, which is 3. And then we're going to multiply it again by 20%. And that's going to give us 50,400. And then you combine the two of those together. So 175,500 plus 37,440 is 212,940. And 187,200 plus 50,400 is 237,600. Check your math. And then our beginning inventory is going to be deducted back out. And we're going to base the beginning inventory on December's ending inventory. So we're going to start with January's direct materials for production, 175,500. We're going to multiply that by 20%. That would give you 35,100 as the ending inventory for December, which will become the beginning inventory for January. And the ending inventory for January becomes the beginning inventory for February. And so our direct materials purchases would be the beginning inventory would be subtracted from the total needed. And finally, so we finally completed our direct materials purchases budget for each one of the direct materials that we have for these units. So what you need to learn, class, is the format for the budget. Start with your sales budget. Your sales budget feeds into your production budget. Learn your production budget. Your production budget feeds into your direct materials purchases budget. Learn the direct materials purchases budget. And this is how we go about doing part of the operating budgets. There are lots of different budgets that we're going to be covering in this chapter. So if you'll take them one at a time and learn them in order, you'll be better off. So we'll stop sharing this with you today, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.